It's been about making change happen, avoiding the worst outcome and in replacing it with a beautiful outcome. And so this vision of a future where we have free energy, this is why everyone should go look at the lost century and how to reclaim it. The subcaption is how to reclaim it.
Yeah.
So the lost century really unpacks a whole century of these wonderful technologies that have been ruthlessly suppressed, but also gives people a pathway of how to bring them out, open source it, bring it out. And we also, though, need people who can fund a research lab to develop them.
Are we any closer today?
Well, we're forming a corporate entity that can take in investment funds. We have aligned to a few people who are interested in supporting it. Nobody's made that commitment because I would not initiate an effort like that without having between $50 and $100 million, simply because to do a proper high energy, high voltage physics lab, and to do this properly, if you do it with less, you're probably going to fail. So, in a world where every week there's a unicorn $1 billion startup company being funded in Silicon Valley, I find it hard to believe that articulating this and putting the evidence we have in front of some people can't result in some serious funding. But we'll see. I mean, so far there's discussions, but what is that Jerry Maguire movie? Show me the money, I'll believe it. One of the problems is, just be frank, is that everyone's curious about this, but a lot of people are afraid to get involved. And then the other part of it is our plan is in the first phase of this technology, open source it, no patents, no intellectual property holdback, because we don't have time to play that game. And that game will result in the technology being confiscated by the patent office. So you have to open source it very quickly. Now, after that happens, there'll be thousands of companies that'll take that basic platform, proof of principle device. It's now the plans are on the internet and it works. It's not fake like most of them. And you're going to have dozens and dozens of companies bigger than Apple will sprout up, because you have 8 billion people living like they are in the 1800s. And to make 8 billion people, to allow them to have technologies, you're talking 15 to 20 years if almost all industrial capacity switched to free energy, 0 point energy systems tomorrow. And we barely have 20 years of the environmental problem and the also Malthusian dilemma of 8 billion people, half of whom don't have any means to live without cutting down rainforests and burning up shrubs in the desert to cook their food. That's 3 billion of the 8 billion people on Earth literally don't have any way of cooking their food except burning things, cutting down shrubs and trees. So in a world like that, you really need a global, what I call it's like a global Marshall Plan. The Marshall Plan is when we rebuilt Europe after World War II, and it was a huge effort. But we need a global one for anti-poverty and the environment and sustainability, but not using things that cost so much, like solar panels and windmills and Tesla cars that have 900 pounds of lithium-ion batteries in them that pollute like crazy and are being plugged in, and their energy is coming from a coal-fired and gas-fired power grid for 80% of that energy. So we have to come up with these high-tech solutions if we're going to save the future of humanity. And that's what the lost century makes a very, I think, strong case for. So I recommend everyone look at that and get everyone else to look at it and network two things. Here's another action call.
Yeah.
You know how I am. It's all call to action. Help us find somebody who has a legitimate system. And I think I have people now who would be able to provide enough funding to them to basically get them to open source it with us. Now, I will say over 30 years, I've seen a few devices that seem legitimate, but they wouldn't open source them. They want to keep it secret and become the next Rockefeller of energy. And all of those people were killed or died or took it to their grave. Every one of them. The rest are all frauds. 90+% of everything you hear about this on the internet are fraudulent devices that are there to separate the foolish from their money. And
Mm-hmm.
I personally was foolish enough to have lost about $1 million, on people who had very clever little tricks and schemes. And so now I'm seasoned about what to look for.
Yeah.
But you learn from your mistakes, my friends. So you better. Because they're costly mistakes. And so the other part of it is to help us find people who can provide the funding. There are thousands of billionaires in the world and hundreds of thousands of people with hundreds of millions of dollars. We just need to find a few people who have enough resources to support this effort under sort of an angel funding initiative initially. Doesn't mean that later in a second or third phase of it, obviously there are all kinds of companies that are going to have to be building these things and selling them, right? And so that'll be a multi-$100 trillion industry going down the road. But at this stage, it needs to be more of an angel funding initiative because it's very high risk, but very high reward. And I have no doubt that it could be done if we had the funding sources in place. And because we could hire some of the most brilliant physicists and electromagnetic engineers and put them all in one place. Our goal would be to have a lab that would be live streamed so the public could see what's going on. So you couldn't shut it down, transparent. And then also hubs all over the world of other scientists, whether it's material sciences, specialized materials, electromagnetic specialists, physicists, who could then collaborate, kind of like GitHub, the software entity, and could collaborate. So if you had a problem, instead of taking a year to fix it, it could be fixed in 2 to 3 weeks, right? Because you can then collaborate. And of course, setting all that up, managing it, all that is expensive. You're not going to do that for, we can crowdfund our documentaries for a few $100,000, but you can't do this. So we need to find some people who can help us with that. So those two things. So, help us find someone with an operational device that's not a trick. Good luck. Or B, or help us find the funding to start this research lab, which with funds in place, we could then sort of acquire an existing technology if it's legit, or just build one from scratch.